Hello everybody, my name is John Dore. I want to thank you for taking the time to look at this video. Basically, I'd like to invite you to a class that I'll be offering probably in January. And you've seen the title, Soul Tending. And basically the goal that I am starting with is to integrate the findings in Western psychology, and especially Carl Jung's version of analytic psychology, with merging it with the traditional wisdom of ancient China, Taoism, and with Buddhism in part. So soul tending is a process of becoming more and more aware of the untapped parts of our deeper self, of the wisdom, power, beauty, where love resides, to be reflected upon, and the guide, the inner guide that is more powerful than our conscious ego mind. So it focuses on our deeper feelings, on our code of values, on moral issues like any moral dilemmas we get into. And it looks at it takes more seriously our intuitions and our gut instincts. Probably most importantly, soul tending deals with listening more deeply to the callings from our soul, which is becoming more and more well known now. And each person has their own notion of what that might be. And each person is quite uniquely individual about how it deals with anything like a calling from its soul. I will say that the process of doing this attending to our soul does illuminate our mind in a different way. And it truly can transform our character slowly over time in the process of what Jung called individuation, becoming the full and complete person that we're meant to be, in touch with more of ourselves and better integrated in our inner life and in our outer life. Now, Jung himself wrote, "If you ignore your soul, then demons will grow in your unconscious mind." We all know the modern demons, the greed, the rage, fear, and many of these things lead to the larger social problems we have, like violence and injustice, corruption, nowadays the horrible polarization among us. Another way to put this is that I call it soul neglect. And I believe that soul neglect limits our very capacity to be loving. Loving other people, certainly loving ourselves, and even loving the world. Even our instinct for survival. Everybody knows that we have a strong survival instinct, but we are much less aware, because we don't want to be, about the archetype of self-destruction, which is the polar opposite of survival instinct. The soul, like the unconscious mind in psychology, will compensate for any of our neglectful habits, our unhealthy habits of mind. It will make up for the one-sidedness that our ego often behaves with. Jung offers us a lot of ways to manage the conflicts that are inevitable in the psyche and between people. Conflicts arising out of our ego defenses, conflicts arising with our shadow, all that we have repressed, that we do not want to really deal with, or we don't want to feel. And there are a whole array of these natural instincts and archetypes that we inherit virtually just by being a human being. One of the things that we'll be practicing as an ideal in our class is called disidentification. So what we do is we take our energy slowly away from the dominance of the ego, where the ego is the main source of, or even the only source of living our life and making our decisions. Jung distinguished the conscious mind from the unconscious self with the capital S. And more and more in his life, he became more Taoist later in his life. And pretty much you can think of the self, which takes over the work of our life from the earlier ego domination, you might say. And the self is pretty much what Taoists mean by the Tao. In the class, we will be evaluating on our own our personal history with each of the major archetypes. Again, ego, shadow, especially the persona, which is the social expressions that the ego gives energy to. And each persona we have a persona for each context each role we play, each context we're in, each relationship. The ego takes the form of a different concept. And also the notion of complex, which was Jung's version of neurosis or psychosis. And he dealt with it in terms of seeing the balance between it and all of the other archetypes operating within us. We will activate images from our dreams and from our fantasies. You don't have to share any more than you're ready to share. But when you bring this material, we'll look at it together. I'll give plenty of examples before we get to that. And the reason we do that is to search for what Jung called transcendent symbols. That is, an image, especially a repeated image or a pattern of images, that provide the solution to the problems that we're having with the conscious mind. That's one of the ways that the unconscious helps us. And again, the life force of the Tao would be equivalent to this. And certainly Taoism in general adds a lot of insight and a lot of practices. And this work is about how Taoism amplifies what Jung found in the Western mind and what the ancient Chinese, current Chinese, find as the powerful resources, especially the practices of Taoism. We will be meditating in several different ways, mainly using Taoist kinds of meditation. And we need this in order to get beyond our intellectual understanding. To find deeper awareness, it will be necessary to have that stillness and the silence and the observing of how our mind works. We will also be using different breathing techniques, which will be useful for becoming calm, or for energizing us, or for preparing us for meditation and preparing us for action. In terms of the Taoist concepts, we will look into what they call Wu Wei, which sometimes is called effortless action, but it certainly has the properties of patience, of spontaneity, and it's a kind of radical acceptance of what arises in our mind and in our life. And certainly it's about an economy of action, not wasting effort, but in being more aware, either not interfering or acting in a minimal way. In addition to Wu Wei, another well-known concept from Taoism is the yin and the yang kinds of energies, other forms of qi energy. They're often assimilated, or certainly aligned with the masculine and feminine energies in each person. And this is an amplification of what Jung meant by the anima, that in each man, he has the soul of the feminine, and in each woman, she has the soul of the masculine. And the goal is to bring these energies together, to coordinate them, and to perfect them in terms of becoming more complete. The goal for Jung was becoming a whole person, being in touch with all the parts of yourself, and especially balancing these energies of aggression versus the energy of the yin energy of nurturance and gentleness. And finally, regarding the tradition of Taoism, I hope that we can together embrace the mystery of what is called primal absence. Buddhists call it emptiness or the void. In Taoism, it's and the absence of everything identifiable, sort of like what's happening under the soil of the earth. And it's defined in terms of absence motivates all kinds of forms to arise, plants, beings, animals, humans. So it is the origin and the source of all forms that emerge in our mind and in life around us. What emerges is called presence. So being present to whatever it is that does arise in our mind or before our eyes in the external world is meant to be accepted, embraced, and changed as needed. But certainly there's a cycle of being born, then growing and decaying, and finally dying, but always after that rebirth. This is the central concept of absence in Taoism. So I hope you join me in this dialogue. We'll be doing it in a very give and take way. I'll provide a little bit of teaching. We'll have a lot of discussion, and each class there'll be an active method, whether it's meditating or a breathing technique or doing some qigong postures. So those are the basic ideas we're going to look at and some of the methods that we'll use. And again, I hope you join me for this dialogue into our depths. And thank you for listening.